The morning sun beat down mercilessly on the hallowed grounds of Liberty Memorial, a solemn site dedicated to the nation's forgotten heroes. Crowds gathered in hushed reverence, families and tourists alike, drawn to witness the ceremonial changing of the guard. Among them was 14-year-old Aiden Blackwood, dressed in the latest streetwear, earbuds dangling, phone in hand, more interested in likes and views than history. His parents, Julian and Margaret, were busy capturing every angle on their own cameras, eager to document this educational experience for social media. Aiden's gaze wandered to the lone sentinel, Corporal Nathan Reeves, who marched with rigid precision in his dark navy uniform. Every step, every pivot, every click of his polished boots carried the weight of decades of tradition. His sunglasses masked emotions, but they couldn't hide the tension in his jaw as he focused on the tomb. Nathan had been a soldier, a decorated veteran who had seen the worst of war, carrying the memory of his younger brother lost overseas. This post was more than duty, it was homage. Bored and restless, Aiden noticed a half-empty energy drink near a trash can. An impish grin crossed his face. "This is going to be hilarious," he whispered, thinking of the perfect viral clip. He stepped closer to the roped-off area, ignoring the signs and the sharp looks from nearby visitors. With a flick of his wrist, he sent the can rolling toward the sentinel's polished boots. The crowd's collective intake of breath sliced through the morning air. Nathan didn't flinch. Not a muscle betrayed him, but internally, his pulse quickened. Years of training and battlefield experience had taught him control, but this was different. A boy entitled and careless had just disrespected everything he held sacred. Aiden, oblivious, raised his phone, narrating for an audience that existed only in the glow of the screen. "Yo, check this out. Statue guy doesn't even react, totally lame." The murmurs in the crowd grew. Parents shielded children. Veterans crossed their arms, and Aiden's father finally looked up, irritated. "Aiden, stop that," he barked. Aiden waved him off. "Relax, Dad. It's just for fun." Corporal Reeves took another measured step, eyes still fixed ahead. In one swift motion, faster than anyone could anticipate, he reached down, grabbed Aiden's phone, and dropped it to the pavement. The crack of the screen was sharp and final. Silence gripped the memorial. Aiden's eyes widened, jaw dropping. His phone, the symbol of his world, lay shattered. You broke it," he screamed, red-faced. The crowd's tension shifted. Some admired the guard's discipline. Others whispered about the spoiled child. Nathan returned to his post. Boots, still gleaming, movements unbroken. Yet the air carried an invisible line crossed. The lesson had begun. The crowd was still, their murmurs replaced by the sharp crack of the boy's phone hitting the stone pavement. Aiden froze in place, staring at the ruined device as if the world itself had cracked along with it. Parents clutched their children closer, whispering cautions about respect. Veterans' eyes narrowed, the lines of experience etched deeper by disbelief and silent indignation. The air was tense, heavy with unspoken admonishment. Julian, Aiden's father, stepped forward, face red and strained. "Nathan, you can't do that. That's assault. My son." His voice cracked, but the corporal didn't break his measured pace. Nathan, returning to his post, continued the march with unwavering precision. His boots clicked sharply against the stone, each step a reminder of discipline earned through blood, sweat, and loss. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to maintain composure, but internally, a storm raged. The reality of what Aiden had done was beginning to sink in, not as a minor prank, but as a breach of sacred trust. Nathan's brother Caleb had died in an explosion halfway across the world, a life stolen in the chaos of war. The tomb he guarded was more than stone and ceremony. It was memory incarnate, the silent testament to sacrifices that went unnoticed by the world. And this boy, so oblivious, had treated it as a prop for social media. Margaret, Aiden's mother, fumbled with her phone, trying to capture the moment. "Julian, maybe we can calm him. He's just a kid," she murmured, though her eyes betrayed concern. She noticed the veterans watching, their expressions hard, unmoving. She realized then that this wasn't about punishment. This was about Reverence, about tradition, about a history too heavy for a teenager to grasp without guidance. Inside, Aiden's mind raced. The thrill of a viral moment had evaporated, replaced by the raw exposure of shame. For the first time, the weight of his actions pressed upon him. His peers' approval, imagined in the form of online likes, meant nothing here. The crowd wasn't entertained. They were judging. Every face reflected what he had ignored: respect, duty, the consequence of thoughtless action. Nathan paused mid-turn, eyes scanning the assembly behind his sunglasses. The veterans' disapproval was evident, their hands clenched, their postures rigid. Some muttered quietly about the new generation's entitlement. The boys' parents were struggling, trying to regain control, but Nathan's gaze met Aiden's for a brief moment. Not with anger, but with a weight that conveyed history, memory, and loss, the kind of gaze that demanded reflection. Security personnel began moving through the crowd, ushering Julian and Margaret away while keeping Aiden contained. The boy protested, trying to reclaim the shattered phone, but the rules of the memorial were absolute, and Nathan had done what the situation demanded: action without hesitation. The irony was not lost on him. He had broken protocol, a sacred law for tomb guards, yet had not acted out of vengeance, but necessity. As the family was led to a small, climate-controlled security office, Aiden's eyes darted around. Photographs of previous ceremonies adorned the walls, veterans saluting, solemn moments frozen in time. The photographs seemed to judge him. He had stepped into history without permission, and now he would face it. Colonel Marissa Holt, commanding officer of Nathan's unit, entered the room. Her silver hair framed a face lined with decades of leadership, her eyes sharp and assessing. "Mr. Blackwood, your son crossed a line, a sacred line. He assaulted a federal officer and defiled a monument to the nation's fallen. This is not a negotiation." Her words hung in the air, heavy with authority. Julian opened his mouth to argue, but Marissa's gaze silenced him. Aiden slumped in his chair, the adrenaline of rebellion replaced with vulnerability. For the first time, he noticed the subtle gestures, the way Nathan's colleagues, the guards, carried themselves with a dignity he had never known, the weight of service visible in every wrinkle and scar. This was a different kind of heroism, one that did not demand applause, only respect. Marissa's tone softened slightly, aware that punishment alone would not teach the lesson. "We will not involve the courts immediately," she said. "But your son will stay under observation. He will understand what it means to honor the fallen. The program will begin tomorrow. Community service, education, engagement with veterans who will share their experiences. He will learn, or he will face consequences far harsher than a broken phone." Aiden nodded, the magnitude of the situation finally settling in. He glanced at his parents, their faces a mixture of embarrassment and fear. The world he had taken for granted, the one where wealth and status could shield him, had shifted. Here, he was accountable not to social media, not to peers, but to history itself. As the day wore on, news crews arrived, capturing fragments of the morning's chaos. Social media exploded, the Blackwood Memorial incident trending nationwide. Yet amidst the frenzy, the lesson remained clear. Respect, honor, and sacrifice were not viral trends. They were lived experiences, heavy with cost and meaning. Nathan returned to his post, boots polished, steps precise, embodying the silent testament to all those who had given everything, and preparing for the next lesson, the next test of patience and integrity. The morning sun filtered through the tall oaks surrounding the Liberty Memorial, casting long shadows over the stone paths where yesterday's chaos still lingered in memory. Aiden Blackwood awoke with a heaviness pressing against his chest, not the weight of sleep, but the weight of consequence. His phone lay discarded on the nightstand, screen shattered, a reminder of the event that had thrust him into a world he scarcely understood. Margaret's whispered reassurances fell flat against the thudding of his own guilt. He knew this was more than a broken device. It was a fracture in his understanding of respect, history, and the human cost behind the monuments he had mocked. Julian attempted to discuss reparations or excuses, but Aiden barely heard him. Every thought revolved around the silence he had disrupted, the discipline he had ignored, and the expectations he had failed to meet. By mid-morning, Aiden was escorted to the training hall, a modest building adjoining the memorial grounds. The walls bore plaques commemorating countless fallen soldiers, the paint dulled by decades but the names crisp and enduring. Nathan Reeves awaited him there, no longer behind sunglasses or in ceremonial stance, but in quiet authority. His expression was unreadable, yet it radiated a patience tempered by experience. Nathan guided him through the memorial, each plaque. "This is your first lesson," Nathan said, voice steady. "It isn't about punishment, it's about understanding. History isn't a story you scroll past, it's a responsibility you carry." Aiden swallowed, nodding mutely. The hall was silent except for the faint echo of boots on tile as other guards prepared for daily duties. Nathan guided him through the memorial, each plaque and marker a narrative in stone. Stories of courage, loss, and unimaginable sacrifice emerged not from textbooks but from the etched names, the worn inscriptions, and the tangible reverence of those who had walked these paths for decades. Aiden felt a stirring he could not name, humiliation mixed with awe, guilt tangled with reverence. The day passed slowly, punctuated by small tasks meant to cultivate discipline, straightening plaques, polishing railings, listening intently to veterans recounting their experiences. Each veteran carried a unique story. One had survived a firefight that claimed his squad. Another had returned home to find his community changed beyond recognition. These narratives were unembellished, raw, and utterly human. Aiden realized that the grandeur of memorials could not replicate the pain and endurance that had brought them into being. Lunch was a silent affair. Aiden sat apart, observing the veterans' quiet camaraderie, their subtle glances and restrained smiles. He recognized that his previous life had been insulated, cushioned by wealth and privilege, leaving him unprepared for accountability and empathy. In that room, his transgressions felt heavier than any stone he had ever ignored or disrespected. As afternoon shadows stretched across the memorial, Nathan introduced a more hands-on exercise, guiding visitors with decorum and instructing them on the significance of specific monuments. Aiden faltered repeatedly, mispronouncing names, misunderstanding protocols, and struggling to maintain composure. Nathan's calm corrections were precise and unyielding, a contrast to the chaos of yesterday. Every error illuminated the distance between juvenile impulse and mature responsibility. By the end of the day, exhaustion settled over him, but it was different from the fatigue of play or leisure. This was the fatigue of understanding, of stepping into a legacy far larger than oneself. He had glimpsed the gravity of honoring others, the necessity of patience, and the value of silent discipline. The lessons of Liberty Memorial were beginning to sink in, and with them, the tentative recognition that actions carried weight far beyond the ephemeral digital applause he had so craved. The next morning dawned with a muted gray sky, the kind that hinted at rain but offered none. Aiden's sleep had been fitful, his mind replaying Nathan's words over and over. Today would be different, Nathan had said. Today was about immersion, not observation. The first task was field work. Aiden followed a team of veterans to the cemetery grounds, tasked with cleaning and maintaining sections rarely visited by the public. Mud clung to his boots from the damp morning grass, and the smell of wet earth was pervasive. He carried a bucket of water and polishing cloths, unsure how his hands, soft and unaccustomed to labor, would endure the work. As he bent to scrub a headstone, a memory surfaced. The soda can incident, the laughter, the chaos. Every echo of that moment felt heavier now, each one a stone pressing against his chest. He realized the act had been more than thoughtless. It had been symbolic. By defacing the ceremonial space, even unintentionally, he had trampled on the sacrifices of countless lives. Nearby, Clara Thompson, the elderly World War II nurse, moved slowly, her walker scraping against the stone paths. She paused near Aiden, her voice firm despite trembling hands. "Each of these stones tells a story, boy," she said. "Not all battles are fought with guns. Some are fought in silence, with patience, with honor. Learn to listen. Aiden nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. He felt shame, yes, but also curiosity. For the first time, history felt alive, palpable, and unforgiving. It demanded acknowledgement. It demanded presence. The afternoon brought a more personal trial. Nathan assigned Aiden to shadow a veteran, Sergeant Marcus Hayes, through a guided demonstration of ceremonial duties. Marcus was a towering man, his military posture flawless, eyes scanning the crowd with a mix of vigilance and wisdom. Aiden stumbled repeatedly, knocking over ceremonial ropes and misaligning markers, the veteran's patience tested. "This isn't punishment, Aiden," Marcus said quietly. "This is discipline. It's respect made visible. Every step you misplace, every gesture ignored, diminishes the memory of those who stood where you now stand." By late afternoon, rain finally began to fall. Soft at first, then in heavier sheets. The memorial stones gleamed under the wetness, each carved name accentuated by the water. Aiden worked in the rain, cold seeping through his soaked clothes, hands trembling from the chill. Every movement, every careful adjustment of wreaths and plaques felt like a penance. He wasn't performing for anyone's applause. He was performing for those who had no voice left. As twilight approached, the team gathered under a canopy, dripping and muddy, but quiet. Clara and Marcus shared stories of comrades, of lost friends, of missions carried out in foreign lands. Aiden listened intently, realizing that heroism was not always loud, not always seen, but always enduring. By the end of the day, Aiden's body ached, but his spirit felt lighter in a strange, paradoxical way. The trials had stripped away his arrogance, layer by layer, leaving him raw but perceptive. He was beginning to understand that honor wasn't a performance, it was a commitment. The following morning, the sky was clear, but a heavy tension lingered over the cemetery. Aiden approached the central memorial with a new sense of purpose. The previous day's labor had grounded him, but today would test his understanding in ways he hadn't anticipated. Nathan led him to the ceremonial area, where the guards practiced precise movements that required total concentration. Aiden had observed from a distance before, but now he was asked to participate. Every step had to align perfectly with the markers on the ground. Every pause, every turn, carried weight. A misstep could diminish the honor being paid. "Remember," Nathan said, his voice measured but stern, "this isn't about speed or appearance. It's about respect. Focus on what these stones represent. The lives sacrificed, the families broken, the promises never forgotten." Aiden's first attempts were clumsy. His feet struck the polished stone at awkward angles, and his hands trembled as he held ceremonial objects. Frustration bubbled up, but Nathan's calm presence kept him anchored. Aiden realized that anger or impatience would only dishonor the memory he was trying to honor. The afternoon brought a moment that would stay with him forever. Clara Thompson had asked to speak to him alone near a quiet section of the cemetery, away from the main paths. She knelt beside a modest headstone, her voice soft but firm. "This is Private Lewis," she said, tracing the letters etched into the stone. "He was 19. You are only 3 years older than him now. He died defending a stranger's home on the other side of the world. Remember this face in your mind every time you falter in respect." Aiden knelt, feeling the cold stone under his palms. The rain from the previous day had left the soil dark and fragrant. He thought of the young faces he had mocked, the laughter he had shared with friends, the viral clips he had hoped would entertain. The contrast was jarring, a mirror reflecting his own foolishness. Later, as dusk fell, Aiden was sent to assist Ethan Caldwell directly. The tomb guard moved silently, each step measured, each motion precise. Aiden carried a bucket of clean water and a cloth, ready to polish the stones alongside him. "You've come far," Ethan said, his voice low but sincere. "But respect isn't given because you work. It's earned in every thought, every action, every silent moment you commit to understanding what others have endured." Aiden nodded, carefully moving along with Ethan, mimicking each step, feeling the rhythm, the discipline, and the weight of history. For the first time, he comprehended the personal cost behind ceremonial precision. The endless training, the mental fortitude, the unspoken grief carried silently by those who had lost brothers, friends, and comrades. As night approached, Aiden returned to his quarters, exhausted but thoughtful. The confrontation with discipline, with history, with sacrifice, had changed him subtly. He wasn't a hero yet, nor had he earned absolution, but the seed of understanding had taken root. He now knew that every action, even the smallest, reverberated across time and memory, touching lives he might never see. In the quiet darkness of his room, Aiden scribbled notes in a small journal, a habit Nathan had suggested. Each word reflected the lessons of the day: humility, patience, respect, reflection. He knew tomorrow would bring more trials, and he was determined to face them with a new mindset. The journey of transformation was far from over. But Aiden understood. Now that confrontation with truth, even painful, was the only path to growth. The morning air was thick with tension as Aiden prepared for what Nathan called the ultimate test. It wasn't just a physical challenge, it was a test of character, patience, and comprehension of sacrifice. Aiden's previous days of labor had taught him humility, but now he faced a trial that would etch the lessons deeper into his soul. Nathan led him to a secluded section of the cemetery, where the older headstones leaned slightly with age, engraved with names from wars long past. Aiden's task was simple in words: clean, repair, and record the history of each fallen soldier. But simplicity was deceptive. The stones were weathered, some with cracks or moss covering the inscriptions, requiring careful hands and unwavering focus. As Aiden worked, he began to notice details previously invisible: a mother's initials, carved into the stone, a hastily etched symbol of faith, dates that made him realize just how young some soldiers had been. Each touch brought a story to life, a life interrupted, a sacrifice made. Around noon, a sudden commotion broke the quiet. A group of teenagers from a school tour had wandered too close, laughing and taking photos. The disrespectful energy reminded Aiden sharply of his own past actions. He felt a protective instinct toward the solemnity of the place. Gathering courage, he approached them politely but firmly, asking them to keep a respectful distance. "You don't get it," one boy snapped. "It's just a cemetery." Aiden's response was measured, his tone calm but filled with conviction. "It's not just about stones, it's about people who gave everything. Imagine someone you care about never coming home. This is how their memory is honored." The group hesitated, and Aiden's words hung in the air. Slowly, they began to grasp the weight of his message, and their laughter faded. In that moment, he realized how far he had come. He could now speak for respect, not just learn it. Later, Nathan instructed Aiden to carry a heavy ceremonial flag across the cemetery grounds, a symbolic act meant to test physical endurance alongside mental strength. The flagpole was cumbersome, the fabric catching on low branches, its weight pulling at Aiden's arms. Sweat streamed down his face, the sun beating down, the ground uneven and hot. Every step was an exercise in concentration, patience, and perseverance. By afternoon, exhaustion threatened to break him. Aiden's muscles ached, his hands blistered from gripping the pole, but Nathan's eyes were calm and unwavering. "Focus on the purpose," he said. "This isn't about you. It's about the lives behind each stone, the trust placed in you to carry their memory with dignity." Night fell, and Aiden collapsed onto a bench near the main pathway. He was drenched in sweat, dirt smudged across his uniform, and yet there was a strange pride in his exhaustion. The cemetery seemed alive in a new way, silent whispers of the past echoing in his mind, guiding him, reminding him why respect mattered. As he reflected, Ethan approached quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've faced the fire today," he said. "Not everyone can endure it. Remember this feeling, the weight, the responsibility. Let it stay with you and you'll never forget what you've learned." Aiden nodded, understanding that trials were not punishments, but lessons etched through sweat, perseverance, and reflection. Tomorrow would bring more, perhaps harder challenges, but he now had the strength and clarity to face them. The boy who had once tossed soda and sought viral fame was evolving into someone capable of empathy, understanding, and honor. The morning mist hung low over the cemetery as Aiden arrived, muscles sore but spirit steeled. Today was different. Nathan had summoned him for a one-on-one with Ethan, a meeting Aiden had both dreaded and anticipated. It was time to face the man whose discipline, patience, and unwavering respect had become the benchmark for everything Aiden now valued. Ethan's office overlooked the sprawling cemetery, the rows of headstones stretching into the distance, a quiet reminder of the weight they both carried. The room was sparse, a large oak desk, a few chairs, and photographs of soldiers long gone, their expressions frozen in both pride and sacrifice. "Sit," Ethan commanded, voice calm but firm. Aiden obeyed, feeling the gravity of the moment. The two men studied each other in silence, the air thick with unspoken tension. Finally, Ethan spoke. "Do you understand why what you did was wrong?" he asked. His tone was steady, not angry, but it carried a weight that made Aiden feel small. Aiden swallowed hard. "Yes, I do. I understand now that it wasn't about me or my phone, it was about them. The soldiers." Ethan nodded, observing him closely. "And do you feel the responsibility that comes with that understanding?" Aiden hesitated, thoughts racing through the weeks he had spent laboring, reflecting, and learning. "I think I do. I want to honor them, not just learn about them." Ethan leaned back, allowing a brief pause before continuing. "Understanding is one thing. Action is another. You've seen the pain, the sacrifice, the lives lost. But words mean little without deeds. Will you continue what you've started? Here, even when no one is watching?" Aiden felt the weight of the question settle on his shoulders like the heavy ceremonial flag he had carried days before. I will," he said, voice firm with newfound resolve. Ethan studied him a moment, longer, then allowed a small approving nod. "Good. There's one more thing you need to see." He led Aiden to a secluded memorial dedicated to fallen soldiers whose names were unknown, each stone marked by wear and time. These men and women, they trusted people like us to remember them, to carry their legacy. You've started learning that. Now take it further. Let it guide your actions. The afternoon passed with Aiden walking silently among the headstones, each step a meditation on sacrifice. The faces of soldiers etched in stone became real to him, young, full of hope, cut short by duty. He felt a connection he hadn't anticipated, a bond not of blood but of respect. Later, Nathan and Ethan observed him from a distance. The boy who had once been reckless, entitled, and distracted had become reflective, deliberate, and aware of a world far larger than his own. That evening, a small ceremony was held in honor of local veterans visiting the cemetery. Aiden, now entrusted with lighting the ceremonial lanterns, did so with care, his hands steady, his eyes thoughtful. The veterans watched him, recognizing the transformation in the boy they had only known through fleeting interactions and stories. As night fell, Aiden finally understood. Honor was not a concept to admire from afar, nor was it a lesson to be endured. It was lived, breathed, and carried forward through every action, every decision, and every respectful gesture. For the first time, he felt that he was not just a witness to history, but a participant in its ongoing story, responsible for ensuring that the sacrifices of the past were never forgotten. The morning sun bathed Arlington Cemetery in a golden glow, casting long, reverent shadows across the rows of headstones. Aiden arrived earlier than usual, a quiet determination in his stride. Today was more than community service. It was the culmination of weeks of reflection, discipline, and an awakening to the gravity of honor and respect. He walked toward the ceremonial plaza, where veterans, families, and visitors had begun to gather. The air was filled with the subtle hum of conversation, punctuated by soft footsteps and the occasional rustle of uniforms. Aiden's hands were steady as he carried a wreath adorned with white and red flowers, its ribbon fluttering slightly in the morning breeze. Ethan met him at the edge of the plaza, his presence a grounding force. "Are you ready?" he asked. his tone neutral but expectant. Aiden nodded, taking a deep breath. I am. Together, they approached the tomb of the unknown soldier. Aiden's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility. He knelt and carefully placed the wreath before the monument, his fingers brushing the stone with a reverence that had been foreign to him only weeks ago. The crowd observed in silence. Veterans saluted, families bowed their heads, and Aiden felt the enormity of the moment settle over him. He thought of every story he had heard, Clara's tales of Normandy, the silent sacrifices of soldiers like Michael, and the unyielding discipline of Ethan. Each narrative intertwined, forming a tapestry of courage and duty. After the ceremony, Aiden approached a small group of veterans. Their eyes, initially skeptical, now reflected a cautious respect. He listened intently as they shared memories of friends lost, battles fought, and lessons learned. He asked questions, not for show, but to understand, to absorb, and to carry their stories forward. Later, Ethan handed Aiden his own ceremonial boots, polished to perfection. A small reminder, he said quietly. Every step you take from here, remember the lives behind these stones. Honor them, and you honor yourself. Aiden's hands trembled slightly as he accepted the gesture, recognizing it as both an invitation and a responsibility. He realized that redemption wasn't a single act, but a continuous journey, a commitment to living with integrity, respect, and empathy. By the afternoon, the news of his transformation had spread. Reporters and cameras captured moments of sincerity rather than spectacle. Social media, once a platform for ridicule, now carried messages of inspiration and reflection. Aiden had become more than the boy known for a reckless prank. He had become a testament to the power of accountability, education, and human connection. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Aiden stood once more before the tomb, alone this time. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the distant echoes of history. He traced the names etched into the stone, silently promising that their sacrifice would never be forgotten. In that quiet moment, he understood that honor was not an abstract concept. It was tangible, lived, and experienced through actions, choices, and respect for those who had given everything. And as he walked away from the tomb, Aiden carried with him not just lessons learned, but a renewed purpose, a commitment to ensure that the legacies of the fallen were remembered, respected, and preserved for generations to come.